Guys, how are we doing?
Very good.
We're rock and rolling.
Are we?
We're rock and
Good to
rolling.
see
We're
you
the
guys
instruments.
again.
Full stomach.
Yeah, the sun is just nice coming through that nice window in your suite.
Our suite.
Our suite, yes.
Hey, Pat.
World headquarters.
In fact, I think you may have a buyer for your house.
There goes my retirement.
Negotiations begin immediately.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, so much talk these days about people being hard up and political leaders being blamed for everyone's woes. I thought it'd be interesting for us to talk about whether or not governments can operate efficiently.
No, this should be a very light topic.
Light. So why don't you get us started, Aki?
Efficiency. Well, let me just start off by saying that governments, their main role is not to be efficient. Their main role is to have impact, to be effective. There's a difference. And if you want efficiency, you can have like the fascists and the Nazis. You can have the trains run on time. Democracy, by its very nature, is not an efficient model.
Is not an efficient
It's
model.
not an efficient model. That's the starting point, gentlemen.
So you talked about governments have an impact. Governments have an impact one way or the other. Right? There's always an impact.
It's supposed to be a positive impact. We want our government
It's supposed to be positive.
Positive impact. That's
So if we look today, we can look at it globally, we can look at it more regionally. Would you say the majority of the population is satisfied with what their governments are providing, the impact that their governments are having, whether it's at the local, state, national level?
You know what? Let me just throw in some Winston Churchill here, right? Remember, democracy is the worst model except for all the others.
Right.
So,
But regardless of ideology, regardless of political system, the question remains, are people generally satisfied with the impact governments are having today?
It depends on the person. If there's a policy that directly affects you and it's a positive policy, then you're going to be ecstatic. You're going to be saying, "Oh my God, this is the best government ever. I needed this. I needed low-cost housing, and look, I just now have a low-cost housing complex that was built, and I can have $500 a month rent, and I could live in a decent place."
Naren, fair enough. I'm looking at it from a more practical standpoint.
Okay.
I'm not looking at whether or not a 1 or 2 or 3 issue constituent
Right.
is happy with the way that 1, 2, or 3 issues are being dealt with. I'm looking more broadly at whether the state of mind of most people today is one of, my government is having a positive impact on my life.
Well, I'm sorry, but that question isn't a valid question in my mind for one reason only, or for one specific reason, which is social media and everyone being told that everything that they don't have is what they should have, and everyone's unrealistic expectations of what a life should be these days.
Do you have realistic expectations?
Yeah, but I'm an old guy.
Oh, you're an old guy. Okay. Do you think it's only young people who are being influenced by social media?
I think the younger people are more likely to be influenced by social media than older folks like me and you and around this table, because we weren't brought up with electronics. We were brought up with, playing with G.I. Joe dolls and whatever, right? If I don't think anyone knows what that is anymore. But in any case, I think the premise is kind of flawed, or the question is kind of flawed, because I think everyone expects more.
guys, government is what we make it. That's the first thing. Government is what we make it. Most people are clueless about their government. They don't even know who their local representative is. Most of them. They know nothing about civics. We have it's very fashionable right now to shit on government, to criticize, to divide, to attack, right? So of course, this is like an environment where there's a lot of cynicism. We know. I mean, all the polls tell us who are the least trusted people in society. It's politicians,
And rightly so.
right? So this is what we're dealing with. But but what do people do? The people have to understand. I mean, good government means people also being engaged and participating, and we don't have that. Most people don't care, or they've given up.
But have we ever had that?
Potentially,
Post World War II, probably. Post World War II was a great time for most countries.
Yeah.
I mean, in North America, not Europe. The countries coming out of the Second World War, they didn't have a very good time, obviously. Yeah. But North America, where we are, our neck of the woods, absolutely, those are banner years.
I think for the longest time, people went into politics for the right reasons. Not anymore. They go in it for the pension fund.
No, but you don't even want to go. Like, there used to be a time, public service used to be like a really
calling.
worthy calling,
Yeah. Back in the Kennedy days.
right? A sense of duty. My whole point is we have nobody. We talked in other conversations about entitlement, but we see that in public life. That people don't understand that they have to participate. If they want a good society, they have to participate. And people don't want to participate, or they just have their narrow interests and their narrow cause, and that's all they're interested in. But you have to put something into it.
Yeah, but that was kind of my point.
I think that's largely been true, though, historically. And I say historically, we can go back as recently as post-World War II, right? We're not going to get back into the early centuries and so on. So post-World War II, I would say that by and large, the majority of the population has not been as engaged and as involved as you suggest is necessary. Yet, the level of discontent today, the level of frustration today, is far greater than anything that I can recall in our lifetime.
Because it's easy. It's easy to criticize. It's easy to be upset. It's easy to be emotional.
It's always been true.
Right?
No,
but
it's always been
government and society require more.
Yeah, but okay, that's always been true. But the ability for everyone in a country to instantly get feedback from 20 different news sources on whatever thing just happened, whatever vote took place or whatever legislation got drafted, and have 20 different points of views thrown at you so that you can start getting upset and engaged and all of that. That's social media that's done that more recently over the past 10, 15, 20 years.
There's no more common ground.
I think that's fair, but by the same token, with each passing generation, there are changes.
Yeah.
And somehow we've found a way to adapt to change. And when I say we, at all levels, whether it's the individual who's now being bombarded with social media that did not exist 30 years ago. Prior to that, the ability to communicate in much broader terms because of the advent of the internet before social media. Every generation has faced changes which have brought about opportunity and challenges and has adapted. Somehow, and perhaps it's simply perception on my part, but I'm basing myself on what I'm seeing and reading, that the level of dissatisfaction, the level of frustration is mounting to levels that we have not experienced previously.
Yeah, and I would say that has to do with the polarization of society. That has to do with the mis and disinformation that's out there. I would have to do with the sense of that would have to do with the sense of entitlement people feel, and the fact that their opinion, it becomes a fact because they're told that everything that they feel is real. I would go, take that to the wokeness campaigns where people feel that they have a right to not be offended. Like, all of this stuff has brought us to a society that we're in right now, and we're not going to change that. So to your point, the folks that are young and growing up in this crap have to figure out how to navigate through this and deal with this in a way that's not going to depress the shit out of them.
Okay, fair enough. And I would say, while it's true that every individual has to figure out how to adapt to this new reality, and some will do so more successfully than others, really what we want to focus on for the purpose of this conversation is government and whether or not government can operate efficiently. Now, I'm hearing Aki say that in order for government to operate more efficiently than it currently does, there has to be a higher level of engagement and a higher level of contribution on the part of all citizens.
That's not what I heard.
No?
I heard we need a dictatorship for it.
No, you heard quite wrong.
So I don't know.
That's not my line. That's somebody else's line. I'll just put that out there.
You said something about the trains running on time.
That was a cue. Somebody has to take that cue, and we know who that somebody's going to be. And here we go. Over to you, Dom.
Yeah. Look, I mean, efficiency, the only way to sort of measure it is always financial. And that's what it comes down to. And money, if it doesn't belong to you, you don't care. That's what it comes down to. And that's the problem. That's why there's, reckless spending, because it's not your money. I equate it to tenants. Tenants, the house doesn't belong to them, so they don't give a damn. So And it comes down to money. It's always money. I know there's other ways to measure that efficiency, but it's money. If it doesn't belong to you, nobody cares.
But there's no other way to have government. There's
Well,
no other way to
so-
have a tax system.
There
Okay.
is.
What is it?
Well, I think a lot of things should be privatized.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You think the American healthcare system, which is privatized, is efficient and is a model?
Well, ours isn't.
No, but there's okay. We're looking for a solution. We're looking about how can we improve this?
So it's interesting because on that point, there are some who suggest that one of the ways in which we can improve the efficiency of government is by increasing the amount of collaboration and cooperation with the private sector. Right?
That the jury's out on that.
I'm only suggesting that some people
Public-private partnerships, and you look at examples of public-private partnerships, no, they're not. It's not convincing that they're better models than the public system. What happens is in those arrangements, it's the private that gets all of the advantages, that gets all of the the best cherries, and the rest, the hard work and the difficult stuff, is left to the public sector. So of course, the private sector then it's a good proposal for them, but in terms of public benefit, there isn't a big improvement in public benefit.
And you would say that's universally true.
Most of the models that we've seen in Europe and in the States, and certainly here in Quebec, where we see that no, they don't meet expectations.
Okay. And do we know why they're not meeting expectations?
Because as I said, I mean the deals are always very much weighted to the advantage of the private sector.
If we understand the causal factors, then we should have the ability to address
Look,
it.
it's like private schools. Private schools are, you can argue they're more efficient, they're more successful. Of course, because they cherry pick. They have, they pick the students that they want to educate. So they have all the advantages. They don't have any wider responsibility. That's easy to do. It's easy, to have like one piece to your mission, which is just, educate the best and work with those that need the least support and least maintenance and are the most motivated and the most resourced. Well, that's fine for maybe 1% of the population. What about the rest of our society?
Yeah, that's a topic unto itself that perhaps we can tackle at another time. I have some thoughts, having experienced the whole private school
without a
system,
doubt,
as to whether or not they're getting those who require, fewer resources and fewer attention and are more privileged. And there's a whole set of issues that comes with that terrain. Anyway.
Can I suggest something?
Of course.
So my suggestion or my thoughts on government efficiency is it's all about compensation. So I've spent a lot of time in the private sector looking at compensation models and ways to motivate. And the way you motivate someone, to Dominic's point, is money. And you have hundreds of thousands, if not, millions of people working in government who are compensated on a certain level. And my view is if you could find a way to provide a bonus structure to the people who are working in government to find the waste and, maybe provide a 1%, so if you find $100 million of waste, you get up to $1 million in compensation if you can actually identify the waste and do something about it. It's not something that triggers automatically. Say every government employee has a way to identify and lower waste and get compensated for it. Well, then you now have 1 million people working in government who are going to try and find ways to lower costs, as opposed to not giving a shit about money and not giving a shit about the money they spend because it's not theirs, because it's taxpayers' money and it's some cloudy kind of concept because it's not
limitless.
theirs. Exactly. Instead, if you start compensating people, and you can start this in trial areas in certain parts of the government to say, okay, you know what, this government, this sector of government or whatever is going to have a new compensation thing where they get 1% of all the waste that they discover, and they don't get paid right away. If they discover something, this is $10 million of waste, they're not going to get $100,000 deposited in their bank account. No, you identify the waste, you put mitigation factors around it, you wait a year, you see if you actually did save that money, or if you saved it in this department, now another department went up by what. No, you do a full analysis of this thing, and if it works, great. To me, it's potentially, it might be simplistic, but it's a way that you start getting people to understand that, hey, we need to run this thing more efficiently, and it all starts with your own personal compensation. So anyway,
I mean, there's merit to what you're suggesting. I think that there are more fundamental issues that can and should be addressed with respect to government inefficiency, not the least of which is how bloated government has become. No one can ever find the arguments to convince me at all levels, local, state, national, that we need as many people as we currently have operating within the ranks of government to carry out whatever mandates they're given. Right?
Oh.
And in order for that to be addressed, you need exceptionally strong leadership. So I understand there are significant differences between public and private organizations, but in many respects, it's reminiscent of large, historically successful bureaucratic businesses that somewhere along the way lost sight of what is required in order to operate successfully, which means optimizing productivity, efficiency, effectiveness. And the same principles can be applied, and in my view, should be applied to government.
They are. They are.
not well.
Not well, but they are. I mean, principle. If you look at senior civil servants' job descriptions, efficiency is all over those job descriptions. How that is executed, that there's an argument to be made about how much of that actually gets done. So it's not a perfect system for sure, but the principle is there. I agree. I mean, when you first of all, if you talk about the American example, if you look at percentage of GDP that is the public sector, I would argue that it's not. It doesn't tell you that that the public sector takes a big chunk of the American economy. If anything, it's probably on the smaller scale. So when we talk about the size of government, we also have to look at exactly what the statistics tell us. You have a lot of Canada, other countries, especially Europe, where the public sector is a much bigger slice of the GDP. So there's an argument. There's something that has to be looked at over there. Right. I'm just saying, first of all, by its very nature and by the very mandate and the responsibilities that modern governments have, it's very hard to be efficient. You want to look at defense. My God, the industrial military complex anywhere in the Western world is huge. It's unaccountable. It's totally inefficient.
Yeah,
Well,
you're not gonna,
generally where there's a lack of accountability, you find inefficiency.
But most people will tell you, especially Americans, they'll tell you, they stand by their military. They want to have the strongest military in the world for all sorts of reasons.
well, look what's
No, but
happening
there's
in
nothing
Ukraine
wrong
right
with
now.
wanting
But
the
that's-
strongest military.
Right.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
But all I'm saying
It
is,
doesn't mean that it has to be wasteful.
yes, all I'm saying is that's very selective. Like the criticism and the mistrust can be very selective. The military is one example where there's it's absolutely it's bloated and it's inefficient, and yet most people will stand by it. You see, it's a reflection of us. That's all that I'm saying is it's a reflection of us. It's going to be as good and as efficient as we're willing to make it.
It's not just a question of will. There has to be a question of competence at some point. And one of the issues, again, I mean, perhaps I'm looking at in too simplistic a fashion, but I think that, and Dominic touched on this earlier, I personally think that there's a lack of talent. And by talent, I mean people who are providing all the necessary competencies, leadership,
Right.
financial savvy, managerial skills, process skills that are required in order to operate any entity successfully, effectively, efficiently.
Yeah.
And I don't see too much evidence of those traits today in public organizations.
Well, it's
I
because
just
they don't pay as much either, right?
That's not true. Over a
That's not
lifetime,
true.
over
Over
a
a
lifetime,
lifetime, yeah.
they pay plenty.
The private sector? I don't know.
Those jobs have become representative of some of the entitlement we've previously talked about in
Exactly.
society.
I know, but if
You serve one term, and you get a lifelong pension.
I'm not talking about a politician. I'm talking about the civil service.
Oh, he's in the civil service.
Yeah, forget politicians.
What can I do
Politicians
for
come and go. The people that actually run the government are the people that work in government, who have
civil
their
service.
jobs. Exactly, the civil service that works, no matter who's running the show, if you will, in terms of the politicians. These are the jobs that typically don't pay as much as the private sector, although they have much better pensions and bulletproof pensions
Exactly.
and all this other stuff. But during your lifetime, You're, it's not a high-powered, high stress kind of job. It's more of a relaxed thing. So if you're in school and you're top of your grade and you're top of your class in business school, in engineering, in whatever, in chemical science, whatever, physics, whatever, your first thought isn't, oh, I'm going to go work for government, because that's not the leading edge of whatever thing it is that you're studying. You're going to work in, financial sector. You're going to work in whatever. You're not going to work in government. The people that government attracts, in my opinion, are not the people in the top of their class. To your point, Pat, you're not getting the best of the best. You're getting the I shouldn't say worst of the worst, but you're getting the bottom half of the class, not the top half of the class.
So I don't think that what you said is inconsistent with suggesting that you can still operate government more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the people that are in there that are
these-
tasked
but
to
these-
do it
these people-
don't know how, because they're not the best of the best.
No, you don't have to be the best of the best. You
Yeah.
know how.
But you need a few of these people. You
Okay,
need a few
so-
stars
In
to
leadership
impress-
positions.
In leadership, but if everyone who's ever been, leadership starts from the bottom up. You're going to have people that go up the ranks of civil service.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you, right? I mean, we have an
You
example.
don't have to be respectful.
I know I don't have to. I
Say fuck you. I don't give a shit about
I choose to be. I choose to be. We have an example here.
I find you being a little bit too woke and too much of a snowflake to actually call me out the way you should. God damn it!
All right. We have an
That
example
whiskey
here
lunch is kicking in.
of an individual who I think is very bright.
Who?
Hacky.
And then the fight started.
Very bright. He's knowledgeable. He's skilled. He's capable. He chose to spend most of his adult life
Not in government.
no, but in what type of roles?
in public service roles on the nonprofit
Okay.
side, not on the
So
government
you
side.
know what?
But
You're a
with
fucking
all due
angel.
so with all due respect,
Yeah.
as much as I admire you, there have to be others like you
thank you.
who are in
There
public
are.
service.
There are.
Right?
So
Not enough.
So so at one point, I'm the only one around this table that did work for government. I worked for municipal government at one point.
No. I beg to differ. We all
Work for government because of the taxes. Okay, I understand. Right, Pat. Very good. So, and I have to admit, when I worked in municipal government, the professionals that I worked with were top notch. So I was on the political side, and I had to negotiate with these civil servants. I had to take, our mayor's plan and make sure that it was executed by the civil service. And it was the civil service for our city. Let me just say. Engineers, top notch. Urban planners, top notch. Managers managing millions and like big teams and having to work with politicians.
Yaki, I'm sorry. This is for this city, the one
This
that's
is
called Coney
my
Island?
little experience. I'm not saying this is my little experience. So
Wow.
so the quality of the people is there. Like my experience has been on budgets, every friggin' $5 of what we were putting in the budget had to be explained and had to be looked at, and municipal is a little bit different because there's more collegiality among the local councillors. That's not a bad model. Actually, the municipal model is one that we should be looking at if we want better government at the borough level.
But you're
Right.
talking about politics
borough
and
level.
not government.
You see, government, what we have to do is it has to be close to the ground. That's the first thing that we have to do. It has to be close to the ground and it has to be close to the people.
But you're talking about the politicians, not the actual
I'm talking
civils.
about civil servants. This is what I'm talking about now, civil servants. And if you have a model and I know, our municipal government, there's a lot of criticism and there's a lot of dissatisfaction, totally. But I'm just saying that the piece of municipal government that is the closest to the people, if you look at your town governments, if you look at those smaller pieces of government, they are efficient. They are accountable. They're close to the people. We have to build on that.
I disagree with you, and I think we can look at it in absolute or relative terms. To suggest that they're efficient, give me data that supports that point, because they may be more efficient than other levels of government, but they're still terribly inefficient.
The municipal example that I'm giving you, we were always on budget. We always met our budget. So if you want to use money and finances as your barometer, well, at that level of government, very responsible managers of the public.
Yeah,
service.
that's not
you
what he
can't-
was
you
talking
can't just
about.
look at it as being on budget.
No,
the
but-
fact of the
well,
matter
That's
is
one
that-
example. I'm just
no,
giving
no,
you.
no, no, it's not being on budget.
It's what did
It's
that budget
return
accomplish?
on investment.
Exactly.
Right.
So if I'm investing $1 in a program, in an activity, what is the return that I'm generating on that investment dollar?
Well, we can
Right?
depending.
So I can say you give me X amount of dollars to spend, and I don't spend a penny more than X. I've done my job. No, you haven't.
No, but I'm going to your because I think it was Dominic earlier who put that out there, that that one yardstick is in order to be able to have more accountability and make sure that we have better results in government. We need them to be accountable on how the money is used.
Yeah, but we're
No,
talking
not
about
used.
efficiency.
Financial performance goes well
Right.
beyond.
So to
how it's used.
I mean, the answer to your question is the dollar that you paid, that you paid to your municipal government or your borough, because there's in some places you have your municipal government and you have your local government at the borough level or the county level, right? So those are the ones that I'm talking about here. Those county level governments and those small borough governments. It is all communicated how the budget is used, the parks and recreation budget, how much activity you have in the parks, what kind of activities, how many people use the parks, use your public facilities. It's all there, but nobody bothers to do their homework and to look at that.
But Aki, those budgets, are they like last year's budget plus 5%?
No.
Or is it like zero-based budgeting? Like you start from zero and you've got to justify every dollar.
Well, of course you have to justify every dollar.
So it starts at zero.
It doesn't start at zero. I mean, you have your base, obviously. You have a continuity. You can't, I mean, at the end of a fiscal year, you still have projects that
But
you
you
still
see-
have
yeah, I know,
to
but-
fund and run.
Okay. Because when you just go take a budget from last year and then add 5%,
Yeah.
those inefficiencies are continuing. They're just
I'm making the case here for local government, small government that I've been exposed to. I'm saying that there's something there in that model that is responsible and that is accountable. That's all that I'm saying. Nationally,
But is it efficient?
I think it is. Well, we have most of us have our parks. Most of us have pretty good neighborhoods. Most of us.
Could they have been built and maintained for 10% lower?
Well, you
That-
could have
that's
that.
what efficiency
You could put
is.
that to anybody and in any sector, not just government.
Well,
Of course, that's a
that's
recurring management principle.
No, but beyond that, you also have to scrutinize, right? So the point is, you may live in a neighborhood or in a community that prides itself on having a public park within a 1 mile or 1 kilometer distance of every residence. It's a wonderful statistic. Is it needed? Is it desirable? Is it affordable? Nobody's asking these questions, at least not that I'm aware of. It's just like we pride ourselves on the fact that historically we've had this many parks within X distance of every resident in this particular community. That's something we should be proud of. Is it something we can afford? Is it something we want? Is it something we need?
But Pat, if you're not, again, if you don't talk to your local councillors, local government guys, that's what I know well. If you don't talk to your local councillors, if you don't react to the information that your community puts out, that your municipal government puts out, of course,
That's fair. At the same time, as I would say, strong leadership at all levels, including local, looks very different to me than what I've experienced. Because while there are ways for me to engage, I don't see a whole lot of effort or creativity on the part of the local governments to engage their constituents. I just don't.
fair enough.
All they say is, here are the avenues that you can take advantage of in order to communicate with us. How about you communicate with me
Okay.
and engage with me in a constructive way?
So let me.
The only time I see them is once every 4 or 5 years when somebody comes knocking on my door to say, hi, let me introduce myself. Here's why you should vote for me.
Okay. So let me give you some examples to respond to what your criticism that you don't have enough follow up by your representatives.
It's not even follow-up. it has to be proactive. Follow up to me implies reactive, after the fact. Proactive.
Right. So I will say that, in general, that's an organizational argument just across the board, regardless of government or the private sector or the public sector. Organizations, the way they operate, you can ask that question and be critical of any organization or how proactive they are.
Some, I can tell you in the private sector, some are extremely proactive.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
But I don't know of any governments that are.
Well, so I'll push back a little bit on that. I mean, in an organization, is the CEO going to go talk to everyone of a 30,000 person organization? I mean, there's one leader and there's maybe
there's not one leader. I'm sorry.
Or okay, there's 10, 15, 20.
In fact, under the most effective models, the relatively few leaders transform their organization so that leadership is apparent at all levels. What does it look like? It's when you have peers who can talk to each other very openly about, are we really focused on the right priorities? They're talking the same language throughout.
Yeah, but now you're taking private sector
No,
principles and you're imprinting them on a government that has no idea how to do that.
Well, no
no.
idea. Having no idea how to do something is not an excuse for not doing anything.
Yeah, I know.
Acquire the necessary knowledge and skills, and there's so many different ways to do so.
Right.
You can bring in people who have the right competency profile, right? You can hire people with the right competency profile.
Right, but they have to have the mandate to make the changes.
You can educate people formally.
So let me give you an example, like local government again. Oh, sorry, you want to finish your point?
I just wanted to say one thing. Change is not easy, and people are resistant to change.
Correct.
And people that are in government who have been there 20 years, 30 years in the civil service have been doing the same thing for the past 10, 15, 20 years.
That's true of most large organizations.
Right. So the way that you make changes in a private organization is you bring in a new CEO who brings in his new, B-level and so on and so forth, and then they push down. Okay. The way government works is every 4 years you get another guy at top. So it's never the same fucking guy that's on top. So now you get this new guy on top and he's going to push down into an organization and all the civil service is going to say, hang on, all the civil service is going to say is, you know what? All I got to do is wait for 4 years and this fucker's not going to be on top anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
So I don't think that's
why
necessarily
nothing
true
changes.
because we have had in truly democratic models, leaders who are reelected, right, for more than one term. We have other models, political models, where the leadership is essentially appointed and remains in place until whenever.
But what I'm saying is,
It doesn't mean they're operating efficiently.
I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying I'm trying to impart the mindset of a group of people who are working in the civil service, who are used to doing the same damn thing, and who understand that every 4 years there's going to be a change of government potentially. Even if it doesn't happen, like you said, they get reelected, fine. But there's a potential change every 4 years. So the mindset of these people is, I don't have to change. I'm going to be here for the next 20 years. It's you that's going to leave in 4 years, right? So that's why So the reason I'm saying this is, in your view, the private sector can change things top down. I'm saying government can.
May I make
May
I make a suggestion?
They can.
May I make a suggestion? Sometimes God bless the civil servants because they're the bright ones and they're the ones that really understand the issues and understand what works and doesn't work. And the political head is an idiot.
Oh, you're talking about the dark state now.
Yes, right? I mean, that is also a reality in government that you need people, who really know their stuff, not the airhead political leader that is completely clueless.
Well, so remember, we're talking about how we get efficient in government, and all I'm saying is there's a reason why after the past 150 years we are where we are. It's not because it's an accident. I think it's just the way.
Where are we? Are you saying that
we're in a shitty place?
Really?
Yes.
You think our society today compared to society in the 1930s?
Hang on. No. I'm talking about efficiency of government. I'm talking about engagement. I'm talking about all
So
these
by the
things.
way, to your earlier comment, I think we're trying to focus on post-World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would still argue that we have better governments and we have better systems than we had in the 1940s.
Yeah, because
during the
we have
Second World War.
automation.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
I mean, there is improvement in our governance. For God's sakes, everybody, look at the quality of life we all enjoy.
No, it's artificial. The quality of life is a smokescreen, Andy. I'm sorry. The quality of life that most people enjoy today has nothing to do with government. it has to do with available credit.
Yeah.
People are more overextended today than they've ever been, and they're artificially enjoying things, material things and services that in previous generations they simply could not afford.
You're looking at it from a purely and exclusively financial standpoint, and that's not what we should be looking at. I'm talking about the type of society that we have in terms of, when I talk about quality of life, I'm talking about our respective neighborhoods. I'm talking about our schools.
No. So stop there. Do we as a society today feel safer today than we did 30 years ago?
Probably not.
Okay. Do we today feel that the education system is more effective today than it was 30 years ago?
I know where you're going with this, and
I'm
my response to you is, we are reactive, we are uninformed, and
is the health system today better than it was 30 years ago?
Depends where you are. In our particular neck of the woods, of course not. It's a disaster.
Our neck of the woods,
Canada.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't want to spend an hour asking you questions that you're going to answer no to, but my point is, from pretty much every vantage point that I could consider, we are not better off today than we were 30 years ago.
Okay, so my argument to you is, overall, if you look at the macro, if you look at, again, the quality of our neighborhoods, if you look at the quality of our public services, there are some important exceptions to what I'm saying. But overall, we're still doing pretty well. And in some places of the world, if you look at Europe and if you look at the Scandinavian countries and you look at the different standards by which they measure their social success, they are doing very well, better than us. Finland has the best education system in the world. In Finland, they pay their marginal tax rate. I'll propose to you is much higher than our marginal tax rate.
It's not.
It's not.
It's
Okay.
about the same.
It's about the same. But there's an example.
But it's a small country, so you can't.
Yeah, it's the
I
size
mean,
of Quebec.
India is a democracy. India has many problems, but it's a democracy of over 1 billion people. That is unfathomable how you can have a democracy with that many people.
The government, guys, the government can never be efficient because people employed there have a job for life. You can't touch them. They're promoted on a schedule. It's got nothing to do with their competence. It's got nothing to do with what they produce. And that's a big problem. It's a huge problem.
Wasn't that true of many large, successful private organizations as recently as 40, 50 years ago?
Yeah, 40, 50 years ago. But
Look at IBM.
But they were forced to change.
Exactly.
Look at
Right?
GE.
Exactly.
recently.
So arguably, government can't be forced to change because survival is not an issue,
Yeah, exactly.
but they can be made to change.
But
I'm not going to lose hope. So to me, can governments operate efficiently? I'm going to say in theory, and I understand in theory, there's no reason for them not to operate at least much more efficiently than they do today. I understand that practically speaking, there are many obstacles,
Many.
but I believe that with the will and with the right injection of talent, it can be made to change.
So what is that? So you're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head because.
So what is the model?
Well, like I suggested earlier.
No, what you're saying. That's still government. What you're talking about is government.
Hang on. What I was saying earlier was a compensation model that's going to hopefully get people to be more efficient. Because Dominic's point is 100% correct, which is in government, you get promoted on a schedule. You've been here 10 years, now you're a senior manager. You've been here 20 years, now you're a director.
Yeah, but
so on.
so-
It's not about how good you
No,
are.
but in your attitude of saying the same unions that aren't accepting terms and condition changes, they're going to say, no, we're not signing up to that.
No, I'm not.
So
I'm
my
not changing
point
their
is-
base compensation.
You want to throw more money at them.
Yes, but the only money that you get thrown at you is when you identify an inefficiency that is actually born to be
which
true.
is why I'm suggesting start by actually reducing the number of people because there are far too many at all levels.
Yeah, but you see, okay, so let me throw a counter argument to that. where when you hire someone in government, you're not paying a dollar for the dollar that you pay him, because each person a government hires is taxing back 30 to 35% of their salary anyway. Okay, and in fact, in Canada, with the municipal, all provincial, and all the other, 70% of the money that you're paying them is coming back into government anyway. So everyone's costing you 30% on the dollar, or 30 cents on the dollar
doesn't
to
matter.
hire.
It doesn't matter.
Well, it doesn't.
no,
It doesn't.
it
That's
doesn't.
why
We're
it's
still
easy.
operating at huge deficits.
I'm not arguing with you on that. I'm just throwing a flavor of your argument back at you to say, you know what? Yeah, we're completely bloated, but I understand the mentality of government of just hiring and hiring, because it doesn't cost them bottom line as much as it would a private.
No, it's costing them more than we all can afford. That's the point.
Yeah, but that's a matter of budgeting. That's a matter of
It's
a
not a
government
matter
like
of budgeting.
Well, look,
Re-
a Quebec government that puts what is it, local missions in different countries when Canada has its
Well,
own.
not just Quebec, all provinces in a lot of American states.
Well, exactly. So all of these things, the dual.
Representation and overseas missions.
Well, yeah, and tax and the Quebec having its own taxation system and all the different people.
No,
that
but
are
that's
doing-
But that's federation.
It's
Duplicating.
So duplication is wasteful. Eliminate it. The point I come back to is, it starts with a desire.
Yeah.
It requires competency, effective change management practices in order to tackle these difficult subjects.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Who's going to do it though?
Well, this is where
This is where we talked about injecting the right level of talent. Today, I argue one of the big reasons we have, I call them failures that we have at all levels of government, is weak leadership. Weak leadership.
Who's the leadership? The politician or the civil servants?
Well, there's leadership at all levels.
But which one are you blaming?
Well, the politicians,
politicians.
right now are the biggest problem.
Well, again, the politicians come and go. That's the problem.
well, no, they don't. I mean, we have governments that are
People
multiple
coming
terms.
and going doesn't address the talent question. Right?
I agree. But again,
If you give me $1 and I give you 4.25 cents in return for that dollar, we really haven't changed anything.
and in fact, you're
Right?
only giving back 3 of them. So
So the fact is that we need to change the politicians, not for the sake of change, for the sake of improving the caliber of people who go into politics. And that requires a societal effort so that we make those roles appear much more desirable.
So you're talking politics, but not the civil service. They're two different things.
No. But they're complementary.
They are.
Right, but who's going to make the change? So is the civil service isn't going to change itself?
Who sets the agenda? Who sets the priorities?
The politicians.
That's where it starts.
Right.
That's where it starts, right? To come back. So to me, the head of state is the CEO who says, whether it's with input or without input, here are the 3 priorities that we're tackling in order. I don't want to hear anyone talk about anything but these 3 priorities until we've made significant progress.
I know, but government can't work that way because absolutely that's,
Government can work that way because it does today.
you have Russia invading Ukraine. So whatever priority the American president had, that has to change. You've got wars that erupt. You've got a
adapt.
pandemic
No,
that erupts.
You adapt, but if one of the priorities in America is we are staunch defenders of democracy, that's a priority.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, a priority is only that, a priority.
Right.
Now you have to have smart objectives
Right. So
and strategies
Right.
in support of that priority.
let's.
Okay?
I'll show you where your logic hits a wall.
When Russia decides to invade Ukraine, countries like the U.S. aren't taken off guard, right? We know, based on the leadership in Russia, that this possibility exists.
Right.
We all understand that we have as one of our priorities staunch defender of democracy. Therefore, we adapt. And we're going to start allocating or reallocating funds and resources in support of this priority. Short conversation. Now, go execute.
Okay, so they do execute, and you have a Pentagon in the case of the American example,
Inefficient.
which is inefficient, but they're executing because the priority is.
And by the way, Pentagon is one thing, but you have inefficient Congress.
Well, of course.
No.
So let me, but Pat, look,
So this has to be tackled at multiple
you're
levels.
you're very, very rational and very brilliant in the way you're making your assessment.
Is that called ass kissing?
No, what you're
What-
saying is we need a dictator.
Right. So go back to your
Right.
example. So we'll take the American example because that's the one you brought up. It's very appropriate. You have the American president. He has established his priority as peace in the world and making sure that aggressors are pushed back. What do we have now? The President of the United States, absolutely, that is his stalwart position. You have a Congress that is independent and has the power to undercut that president's policy, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So who is the inefficient one there? The president or the Congress or both or what? But again, you're going back to
Well,
democracy.
given the current climate, I would say both, but that's an opinion. So every political system is flawed. Right? There's no perfect
Because
political
humanity is
system.
flawed.
Actually-
there's no political system that is perfect.
Benevolent dictatorship.
So
Yeah.
the U.S. and it's not for me.
Give us an example of
It's
that
not.
later.
It's not for me to decide.
Kim
It's for
Jong-un.
the American population. It's for the American population to decide.
Oh my God, we lost a camera. Houston, we have a problem. Houston,
You didn't like my benevolent dictatorship?
somebody, yeah, that's an omen. The camera collapsed when we were talking about benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, stop smacking the table.
Back in the table.
Power to the people. So the
So
Congress.
the
and
U.S.
president-
example
Yes.
is one where at some point in time, the U.S. population will have to decide whether or not changes are required to their system in order to render it more efficient.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
Look
it
at
may-
ours.
It may not.
Look at our first past the post system of and
And I come back to
what is it?
We're going to live with imperfection.
exactly.
All I'm suggesting is at some point, the population will have to decide what is most important to us, right? To your earlier comment, engage, get involved to some degree in order to ensure that we bring change. If not, let's just all sit back, right?
Thank you.
Put our hands under our butt cheeks, keep complaining and criticizing, and not a damn thing will improve. If anything, with time, it'll get worse.
Yeah, but we're getting older. That's what old people do is we complain.
We're getting older doesn't mean we're old.
But to the point of
And by the
that,
way, I was complaining at 14 years old. So
but
I've been honing that skill for years.
to Pat's points about giving priorities, that's where you start with efficiency. If we take Canada as an example, we need to eliminate certain things. CRTC, CBC.
What?
We don't-
National broadcaster? What country? What advanced country is without a national broadcaster?
What does it do?
What does it do? What about your brand? What about your voice?
Nothing.
What about a country that's 7,000 kilometers long and with communities
Yeah.
spread all over a
Yeah.
continent? How are you
Yeah.
gonna communicate and bind them?
We have private networks to do that.
Oh, right, private. No, who's gonna go? Who's gonna go to the northern part of Quebec?
Well, maybe we're not interested.
Well, then you can't be a country.
Sure. Why not?
Okay, guys, let's calm down
Okay,
now.
no,
Why?
Don't touch his
No,
CBC.
no, that's how you get it. That's how you get.
Well, the U.S. has the PBS, so
Well, PBS is private. It's not, it's funded by people. They want to fund it. Not like us. We have no choice.
don't they have C-SPAN?
Your problem is not the CBC. Your problem is not the CRTC. We happen to be a small economy sitting nestled right up against the most influential, cultural superpower the world has ever seen.
Nobody watches the CBC.
Doesn't matter. I want to have an identity. I don't want to be an American. I don't want to be a part of the United States. So how am I going to do that? I need to have my own institutions
CBC
and my
does
own
that.
voice.
So guys, you know what I really like
Yeah.
is to hear the differences of opinion and the debate. And that's exactly what needs to happen. Right? And then we need to have decisions. So once the debate is done and everyone has a chance to voice their opinion, we make the hard decisions, we act on them, and we move forward.
Oh, wait. You're
And
talking about
And once
compromise.
a decision is made, no, not necessarily.
Very inefficient. Compromise, very
It
inefficient.
doesn't have to be compromised.
So one person has to take it up the ass. Is that what you're saying?
In Greece, perhaps, I don't know. And we're talking about ancient times.
Did he just say in Greece? I mean, I am a Greek and I'm right next to him.
Yes, but notice I'm facing you.
The outrage.
I'm not turning my back to you in any event.
There's still some time in the show, but anyway, go ahead.
The tough decisions to
Turn the
be
other
made
cheek.
and then acted upon. And whether or not you agreed with that decision initially or not, you take ownership of it and you do everything you can to make it successful.
Guys,
That's the model.
we're never going to change a fucking thing in government because government has a life of its own because it's filled with
Well-
2 million people who've been there for 20, 30 years. Yes, I love it's inspirational.
I disagree with you. We've had
Yeah.
so many examples in our
course.
lifetime of changes, right? Today we talk about Germany. When we were kids, we didn't talk about Germany. There was East Germany and West Germany,
Excellent example.
right? We've seen 3 different political systems before our eyes in our years of existence in what was the Soviet Union and is today Russia.
Exactly.
3 entirely different models, right? We've seen in America, which is the most closely watched of all systems across the world, right? Again, early in our lifetime, when opposing parties actually got together and made the difficult decision to impeach a president on valid grounds.
May I just jump in there? Remind everybody, it was Republicans, the Republican Senate, that went up to Richard Nixon and told him he had to step down. Can you imagine any Republican today standing up to Trump?
Not yet.
The easy answer is no.
Of course not.
Well,
So-
they will once he's no longer electable. So just
So after he passes.
no.
Exactly.
No,
Honestly,
they-
my perspective, I didn't know we were going to get into politics, but in my perspective, the man is
We're talking about governments.
unelectable. Just
How?
Well, you have to ask yourself the question of all the people that voted for Biden last time, how many people are going to now, as long as they go out to vote, let's not take that away. If everyone who went out and voted for Biden last time, how many of those people are going to now change their vote to Trump when they couldn't stomach voting for him last time? And you look at what he's turning
That's
into
not
now.
the issue. You're missing the point. You're missing the point.
What point am I missing?
You're
It's
missing the
votes.
point because first of all,
It's votes.
You talked about assuming it's based on the number of people who are going to go out and
I said
exercise
that.
their.
That's what I said. Assuming
No, no,
everyone goes out
they're
to
not.
vote.
But the easy answer is they're not because the level of dissatisfaction with Biden is so great
Yeah, but the
that a
whole
lot of
abortion
people
issue.
who support it doesn't matter.
Okay, but let's go back to the fundamental point that you were making, which is
Let's
about
agree to
the
disagree.
examples of change that government has been able to put in place. There's been
Well,
significant
or the
significant
people,
examples.
the
Or the
people.
Civil rights. Civil rights is huge. Human rights, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, United Nations. These are all systems, these are all examples of governments really affecting change. So again, it comes back to
And it starts with
It's
a
a
will,
wi-
with a desire.
that's right.
If people want to see significant change, they'll get involved.
Yeah, you're right.
Right?
It needs people who are
So
involved. and do something.
today, again, my perception is we have a very high level of discontent. But because people are not willing to get involved or to get engaged, we are not seeing any significant level of change that leads to improvement. We are seeing change, but the change we're living is a deterioration. I come back, with all due respect to your point of view, that the deterioration in the sense of safety that we all have. When we were kids, you went out, you played outdoors. Today, parents won't let their kids, in front of their homes. I hear more. There have been more homes broken into on my street in the last 10 years than I can recall over a 30 or 40-year period across different neighborhoods. The world is not a safer place. It simply isn't.
I know, but you have to be careful because some of it is, and you have to be careful with anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence, it's not really the best argument.
It's beyond anecdotal.
Right?
It's
If you look
beyond
at, we're still,
anecdotal.
if you look at our city, we're still, one of the safest cities in North America.
I'm not looking at our city. I'm taking a macro point of view.
Okay.
The world is not a safer. Post World War II, we have not had this level of conflict. And what I have to tell my kids and other young people, relatively young people, is from a historical standpoint, what is unprecedented is the period of relative peace that
Yes.
we enjoyed in our lifetime.
And prosperity.
So they've never experienced this. So, you know, you weren't born in Syria or in the Middle East or in regions of the world where, you know, there's been conflict as far as we can remember. But from a global perspective, we've lived in relative peace and harmony.
And this is
now we're reverting back to the ways of yore.
right? Because of certain actors in Russia and so forth. But
And
my
elsewhere.
point, but my point though is exactly this is what I'm saying. We are, I mean, globally and on the macro level, you have made the case for positive change and how the world has become better in so many concrete ways that you just laid out. But if you want to look at efficiency, you can argue that all of this that you just gave as examples, if you want to take a purely business approach to it, you can find like reams of inefficiencies in everything that you just described in our civil rights, in our peace. We could be smarter with our peace, with our international relations, and so on. So this is what I'm saying. This is the problem with the premise of this conversation. Government efficiency, we established it by, if you're a democracy and you're going to be setting up a democratic system and society, it's by nature inefficient because you have to compromise, because you have to negotiate, and because you have to share power. That's the antithesis of efficiency, pure efficiency.
No, so nobody's talked about pure efficiency.
Just more efficient.
Efficiency is a relative measure.
There you go.
Do not invest in programs, regardless of how desirable they are, that you cannot fund.
Well,
So you may have to make trade-offs. These are hard decisions. If this becomes a priority for me, right? If I have a list of 5 items and I want to take item 5 and move it up the list to number 2, I have to accept that I can't afford all 5. I can't afford to fund all 5. So something's going to have to give. Either I forego certain other programs, or I lessen the level of investment in those programs in order to reallocate funds. But I have to have the discipline,
yes, you do.
not year after year after year, to operate at a deficit.
Correct. So let me be a little more specific. On the social side, there are situations, socioeconomic situations, that are very costly to us. Homelessness, childhood poverty. There's people not taking care of themselves, becoming obese and being a burden on our healthcare system. There's so many issues socially that are really huge problems for us. And how do we address those? And sometimes, I mean, if it means like short-term debt, I will say this, in order to solve social problems that will bear fruit for us in the long term, then I think calculating debt and assuming some debt is perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly good public policy. The problem, of course, is that that's gotten out of hand. I agree, but this notion that we always have to balance everything and we have to make sure that the only criterion is the balance sheet, that doesn't work for government or for society.
Well, like instead of
No, it has to work for government.
yeah,
You cannot operate at a deficit year after year after
but
year
that's what he said.
indefinitely.
But
No,
that's
no,
what
no,
he
no,
said.
no, no.
I said limited deficits. I'm sorry, limited
No.
deficits. Limited deficits.
I kind of agree with Aki on this one
Wait.
because.
Oh, talk about ass kissing, eh?
Wait, no, hang on a second.
That's
because
more like licking.
But if you're doing a multi-year net present value analysis of a program, like to your point that says, okay, we're going to address obesity, but it's only going to give payback in 5 or 10 years when we have less hospital interactions with these people who would have been, potentially going in for surgeries and so on, or heart bypass
And
or whatever,
ER care and so
and
on.
all of that, and you now have a 5 or 10 year business plan for this thing, and in the first 3 years it's going to be a deficit. But
Exactly.
No,
then,
but
whatever.
yeah, but that,
You're missing the point. I said year after year after year indefinitely.
No, nobody.
that's
nobody
not-
we
but that's
agree.
not what he
Nobody,
said.
I'm not saying that.
That's
I'm
not
not in
what he
favor
said
of
either.
indefinite
so
deficits.
let's be precise.
So I think we're all agreeing.
No,
Short-term deficits may be acceptable.
for a clear strategy, for clear improvement on a very pressing, social crisis.
A return on my investment.
Well, that's it.
what you need is a combination of both.
Well, that,
What you said, Aki, and what Pat said. When you have a priority like that, you get rid of another one temporarily until you get that one cleared.
That's part of the exercise, but it doesn't work. But sometimes it's not
I
possible.
would-
No, I will not disagree with you that there are years or periods of time during which, as a society, we have no choice, for a variety of reasons, but they have to be valid, to operate at a deficit,
I agree.
Yeah.
but that cannot be sustained.
I agree. I look.
I think we're all agreeing around this table. I mean, it's not.
By the way, Aki, I'll go on
But
record.
that's not the world we're living in today.
I'll go on record to say not only would I cut the CBC, I would also cut the Radio Canada. So just to be fair.
You're an equal butcher, aren't you?
So again, it's an interesting example where you can look at various countries around the world and look at crown or state-owned corporations. What are the pros? What are the benefits? What are the cons? Where does it make sense? Where do we want to see ourselves? Okay, it becomes an area that we choose to fund. In other areas, you may say, really, there is no tangible benefit. It was a nice thought. It may have been beneficial for a period of time, but as we look towards the future, don't really see much benefit. Let's privatize or do whatever we will with it.
You would think that
Take a pragmatic approach to things as opposed to just
We agree.
staying tied or
I
married
agree.
to these
I agree.
And every year you should go back and take a look at the program and take a look at the analysis that you've done and see if you're on track. And if you're not on track anymore, then maybe you don't keep
That's
funding.
no, Nuran. That's to your point about inefficiency. There's a really good example of inefficiency. Program evaluation is a nightmare in government.
Well, they should be doing it yearly.
Right, but they don't do it enough. There's no buy-in. It's a real struggle.
Well, that's where private,
So-
private enterprise has it over government.
Well,
because you have to do
some,
this.
not all. There are a lot of private organizations that operate very inefficiently, right? Or fly by the seat of their pants. No,
Not the
my
ones
point
you
is,
worked at.
the ones I worked at?
Not the ones you worked at.
Well, I tried to do my part, but you have to take a pragmatic approach, right? So what are your priorities? You set smart objectives. And for those who don't know what that is, we can have a whole podcast around that.
Right.
You execute, right? You have your strategies that you execute. And
How
to
many
the point
people
you just
do you
made,
execute?
No, that's Dominic's line.
You don't execute people. You try and treat them even under the most difficult circumstances
What?
with respect and dignity. But it is absolutely
I'm taking
true.
my victory lap.
I'll tell you a quick story.
I'm taking my victory lap.
I'll tell you a quick story offline about the implications of that. But the fact of the matter is that the person who feels they've been wronged is always going to have something nasty to say about you, and you better have thick skin because it comes with the job, right? But
all
my point is,
Romeos
you
have
monitor
thick skin.
monitor your progress continuously, report on it, and improve on it continuously. These are not difficult notions.
No, they're not. It's just they're not done in government.
Correct.
Because
They're
you
not
don't
done
have
well.
the mindset, you don't have the skill set.
You don't have the
And-
accountability.
but also, I want to remind people that if you really are serious about government, then make sure your voice is heard. Then participate in your local councils. Talk to your representatives.
So
Be involved.
All valid points, right? At the same time as you should be reaching out to members of government and sending the exact same message to them. Talk to the people. Engage with the people.
They have no choice if
No, they do it once every election cycle. Vote for me. Here are my promises.
Well, look. I mean, there's a lot of pushback from people on so many issues, and when the pushback is really sustained and it's powerful, hey, they react. We look at Canada. I mean, the exemption that the federal government gave to the Maritimes on the carbon tax. There's an example of government working for those people. You could disagree with the government's approach, but there's an example.
It's not a question of disagreeing. The motivation is there was a threat.
People spoke up.
We can't win re-election without the support of this.
Whatever, though. But be fair.
Yeah,
But
but-
be fair. But be fair. I mean, but be fair. There's an example. There's an example
understand exactly.
of people pushing back.
Okay.
And then government reacting.
That's the fundamental issue of change because of all these re-elections, and you're talking about politicians versus civil servants. I get back to that all the time. That's why I don't think there's going to be a quick change. To your point, you need a whole bunch of new blood coming in with the mindset of, no, we're going to fix this thing and we're going to do it right.
Yeah, so I'd say, fixing, 4 years is a long time.
Not really.
Yes.
Last 2 years, they're going to try and get reelected.
No. It's never mind. They're going to try what they're going to. 4 years is ample time to address change programs. It doesn't mean you're going
Not
to
to complete
end
them.
of job. No, it doesn't mean you're going to get to end of job. And by the way, you have to have a continuous improvement mindset as it comes to change.
Yes.
It's not point in time. All I'm saying is 4 years, you can accomplish a lot.
Yeah.
We typically don't.
Yeah.
Because we're sidetracked. Because the nonsense comes to the fore. We get distracted. Absolutely. But that's the nature of society, and that's the nature of people.
May I suggest that we just figured out how to fix everything?
That we have or that we should?
We have. We've now given the blueprint of how all governments should be fixed, and we can move on.
So we're talking about new blood in leadership positions,
Correct.
a culture of constant change and evaluation,
Correct.
and strategic debts and deficits are acceptable for the greater good. I'm happy.
Competency,
Accountability.
accountability.
I'm happy.
And
I
engagement.
said my piece. I said my piece. I'm
Cut to
happy.
CBC.
And Radio Canada.
That's okay.
Okay, guys, before we tear each other apart, let's wrap.
Yay.
Another great conversation. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
And we'll see
Good
you
job,
next time.
Romeos.